The Bookshelf with Ryan Tubridy is brought to you by Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller. Eason have a rich heritage of bookselling since 1886, and it's probably where you got your first ever book, or maybe your last one, and indeed, hopefully, your next one after you listen to this episode of our podcast. And stay listening for our Ryan Recommends slot, my weekly recommendation, where I'll discuss a book I've read recently that I think you'll really enjoy too. As ever, all the books we discuss on this episode of our podcast are available now in your local Eason store, or order online from easons.com before 6 p.m. for same-day dispatch with free delivery when you spend over a tenner. Eason, be inspired. Well, welcome everybody to The Bookshelf with me, Ryan Tubridy. Today we have a truly special and an exceptional guest, I have to say. Rugby legend, renowned as one of the greatest players of all time. He captained Ireland for nearly a decade, led the British and Irish Lions, and was instrumental in numerous Six Nations Championships wins for his country. He remains the all-time leading try scorer in that competition, a testament to his incredible talent and impact on the game. And while his achievements on the field are extraordinary, today we're going to try and discover a different side of Brian O'Driscoll to talk about three of the books that he's brought in from his shelf. The childhood book, the book that made him cry, and the book that changed his life. Brian O'Driscoll, what a pleasure to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
This studio in Dublin is very near the Aviva Stadium. And as I was coming along, I passed the Aviva Stadium today, and I was reminded of a brilliant tweet from Russell Crowe. And it was him and his family at the Coliseum. And he said, "I'm just bringing the kids to the old office." I thought that's a bit like Brian O'Driscoll in the Aviva. When you're with the kids, you kind of point it and go, "That's the old office." I mean, what's it like passing that stadium?
Yeah, and I pass it a lot. You know, my parents live over in Clontarf. I go to the airport a lot, so that's my route. You know, from where I live on the south side. So I do pass it a lot. I don't know, like when the kids are in the car, you know, it'll get a mention, you know, from my middle child who's, you know, the rugby and football fan. So he'll make some reference to it. But it's, I don't know if we kind of pay all that much heed.
You don't all get out of the car and you know, and pray. No,
and you know, get the shrine to myself from the boot and pose for pictures. No, it's just, do you know, I've been to games with them, and not the youngest, but so that's lovely. Yeah. And you're kind of reminiscing, but you're living those experiences vicariously through them, really, than for yourself. The experience of games. I'm not going for myself anymore. I'm going to watch their joy, and a little bit of me feels it's a shame that they weren't around, you know, or old enough to enjoy even a couple of years. You look at someone like Johnny Sexton, who's had so much joy with his children, and a bit of heartbreak as well, but a little bit of you thinks, that would have been nice. Yeah,
I appreciate that. And there's only so much watching it back on TV can do, but to be part of to smell that day.
Yeah, I don't think my son's ever watched a YouTube clip of me in his life. You know, it's Messi and Ronaldo. So, yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well,
I mean, that must be very upsetting.
The psychotherapist has been very good with
it. My son just wants to watch Ronaldo. You mentioned your shrine. Can we talk about your shrine? I mean,
sure.
At home, where is the stuff?
It's in the attic.
Go on.
It's in the attic.
What's up there?
Like jerseys, and I don't even know. Like our attic, we're only in our house 5 years, and it's literally, you can't get in the door. Like it's rammed up there. And it's a decent size attic. Yeah. Like it's just like training gear. Lots of jerseys and, you know, boots. And you kind of give some of it away to charity, and you want to hold on to some of it.
Medals, trophies, stuff like that.
I'm not even sure where the
is it like in Aladdin's cave up there for rugby? For you, obviously.
Yeah, maybe.
I would imagine.
A lot of golf stuff. A lot of, you know, any golf kit that I don't want is probably up there. There's so many suitcases, like old IRFU suitcases that are, you know, holding things. But
no
golf
shrine.
Bags. No shrine. I've got. Do you know what? I have an office at home, and we've got a wall. You know, of art and pictures and artifacts and things that are relevant to us. And there is one a rugby piece on it, which is my Centurions cap, which is getting, part of a club of 100 plus test matches for your country.
Yeah.
So that's up there. But my miss has been big on trying to push for more things to go up, and it's just...
She wants to play. We should mention Amy Huberman, a great actor and a great person.
And I don't I know they're there. I know they're up in the attic. They'll be good to have. I gave Trevor White... who I think
the Little Museum of Dublin.
Yeah. So I gave my hat-trick jersey in Paris in 2000 to him to show for a lend, for an indefinite lend.
So stuff like that.
Because, it's worthwhile. It's a thing.
Yeah.
But like other jerseys,
so
why?
There's no shrine. There's no shrine.
No.
People will be amused at how, you don't really, you're not greatly impressed by the past of that in some ways.
I think the memories are what you have.
Yeah.
They're the important things.
Not the stuff.
Some photos, don't get me wrong, I'll have a few photos, not even in frames, but just every so often maybe in your desk.
Yeah.
You're rifling through things and you'll find some photos, or I'll look back on my phone and see photos of kind of yesteryear, good times.
Yes.
There's no need to have it remind every day. It's there. It's back there somewhere. Like the memories of the books, they're back there somewhere.
I love that that's a beautiful segue. Thank you, into the books, because we are talking about 3 books from your life, and the first book is the book from your childhood. And give us a sense of books in your life as a kid. I mean, your family wise, what were you dealing with? Was it bookshops, libraries? Was it mum, dad? Was it teachers? Who was bringing books into your world?
I think a little bit of library. Yeah, mum and dad. I'd say my sisters were probably better readers than I was. It was an end of day thing. It's funny, history repeats itself. My middle child, my 9-year-old Billy, is literally a carbon copy. I can see myself in him. Like literally do everything except go and do what you really should be doing. So like any form of sport or ball sport or anything, any opportunity to be distracted by that, He's there and he's doing that. Can't watch a game. I could never watch a Man United game. I'd watch 10 minutes of it and then I'd be out playing football.
Get away.
Yeah, and he's the exact same. He's a Liverpool fan. I wasn't able to convert him. So,
who do you support? We should ask.
I'm a United.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
And I think just to annoy her brother and my daughter's decided to be Man United fan.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Well, that's a complete subcultural pop psycho therapy.
Yeah. I haven't gotten there with the psychotherapist.
It's for another day. Yeah. You've got a lot of sessions to go.
Yeah. She's going to do well out of me.
So Billy is the middle lad is his father's son in that respect. Then do they want a story at night?
But we're obviously less so now. They go and read themselves, and we're big on encouraging now, particularly back to school. Getting to bed a bit earlier. Bedtime not being as long as it can be, and to go away and read even 5 or 6 pages.
Yeah.
My daughter is a good reader. She gets through a lot of books.
Good on her.
And obviously Ted is only 3.5, so he gets read to every night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you read?
Oh yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Do you do voices?
Yeah, you try to, but then you're like, you have to make sure you don't trip yourself up. That you're like, it's the exact same voice for 3 characters.
Why does he sound like that tonight?
And so I'm just confusing him by not. But who's saying what? He's looking at me going, this makes no sense.
No consistency in the storytelling. So when we said to you, pick a book from your childhood, did you go, oh, I don't know, it's too like it?
No, easy.
Or did you know?
That was the easiest one.
Talk to me.
Yeah. Roald Dahl was a big thing for me.
Favorite.
And you have to remember too that back in the 80s, it didn't feel like maybe it's I'm seeing things with a skewed view, that it didn't feel like there was the level of access to books that there is now, and you think about how many quality authors are. Of course there were back then too, but for me, my childhood was about Roald Dahl.
Yeah.
I know there was, depending on what your genre was or what you had a penchant for, like all Enid Blyton stuff was never my cup of tea. But the Roald Dahl with Quentin Blake's illustrations. I just, I kind of ate them up.
So you had the Twits, George's Marvelous Medicine, Charlie and the Chocolate
Fantastic
Factory,
Mr. Fox.
Fantastic Mr. Fox,
Loved
Danny the
that.
Champion of the
Loved
World.
That would have been a close second.
Fantastic Mr.
yeah,
Fox.
Yeah.
Okay, have you seen the Wes Anderson version of it?
I haven't.
Please, that's your
Okay,
homework. I
okay,
think you're going to love it.
Excellent.
Do you know what? I think we might convert Billy with this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If he watches that,
Okay.
I hope. Anyway, have a think about
All
that.
right.
But these are all that came a close second to your number one.
Yeah.
The book from your childhood, from your shelf, Brian O'Driscoll.
It is Matilda.
Ah, good choice.
Yeah, no, she was brilliant. I'd read this a few times, because I remember a good bit of detail from it. I haven't had to do much research on.
Well, I'm
this
not going to test you on it, but I am going to ask you.
Good.
But I am going to ask you what was it about that story?
I think just the relationships. The parents and her magic and smarts, Miss Trunchbull, and the scary headmistress.
Yes,
that doesn't want to know that it's almost the antithesis of how you want your headmistress to be, around enthusiastic and positive and bringing the best out of people. It's like she's not that.
Yeah,
and then the kind of side relationship with her dad and Miss Trunchbull and all the selling the car, didn't he? Wasn't it Sawdust? Wasn't it?
And Miss, is it Miss Honey?
Miss Honey,
the wonderful teacher, the absolute
amazing,
dream teacher.
That sort.
Yeah,
and was able to, extract the brilliance from her and trying to get the parents' attention about this genius child that they had, this amazing talent, and how they just weren't biting.
Isn't that the skill of Roald Dahl, where he always was on the side of the child, always understood that children were worth hanging in there for, and adults were always just too tall, too pointy, too angular, and actually just quite unpleasant creatures. And I think that's what you seem to be alluding to. And all those books,
I think there's just magic in that too, isn't there?
Yeah,
truly.
In
thinking that a child could have this capacity, like. It does. It allows your imagination to go and wonder. That's what reading for me, certainly as a child, and even now, is around. I don't read that much factual stuff.
Do you not?
No, I like being taken away.
Yeah.
I read the autobiography, but I love just being immersed in another world.
Yes.
Where someone's and I revel in the genius of someone that's able to navigate and bring you through this journey where they've had a blank canvas and been able to create this amazing story just from their thoughts. I just think it's such an incredible talent.
Yeah. What were you like as a kid? Say pre-rugby days. I mean, say pre-12. Were you comfortable, happy, sociable?
Quiet,
shy.
Yeah.
Because I always thought during the years that I met you before you retired from rugby that there was a shyness to you.
Yeah.
I always felt that, even on chat shows and stuff like that, that you were, I just didn't think that your first choice in life would be to be on TV or radio necessarily, that, you knew what your passion was and that this was a side plot.
Yeah.
But was that shyness, do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I think I was happy to be a part of the pack, as a kid. And even now, I think there's an element definitely of an introvert where, I have a fuel tank and I when it's low, I don't want to talk, and it's, I suppose that's the beauty of having, a partner that is so outgoing and with so much energy. And we were just talking about it last night, and she sometimes goes, "Everything okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, fine. I'm just
out of juice,
happy. Yeah, I'm just
out
happy
of juice to
be present. Just happy to be here.
Just happy to listen to your thoughts, unfiltered."
Yeah. So
as a kid, you would have been, as you say, sociable, but not not in front of the class.
I don't know. It's so funny. You don't know what person you'd have become. No. If I didn't go the career that I went with, being pushed into the spotlight at a very young age, at kind of 2021, particularly after scoring the hat-trick in France and then very quickly becoming captain, way before my time as a 23-year-old. And you're really thrown out into the open, and you have a lot of learning to do. And listen, you make mistakes. I had yellow hair for a couple of years, and you do some silly stuff. But it's...
I don't mind.
You're living your mistakes, in the public domain.
And you're young. You're meant to make
and so
mistakes.
that's why I'll always look at those young guys coming through now. They're meant to do that stuff. Allow them be, trying to find out who you are. What personality traits you have.
And the strong ones and the good ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you frightened at any point at the responsibility you were given at such a young age? Or was it scary in any sense?
Yeah, it was. I was frightened in some of the parts of the role that I had, that it was just not, it didn't come easy to me.
Like what?
Like the public speaking piece was a real stress, particularly in whatever about out and about or at, events or dinners, like talking to teammates in a we used to have a captain's meeting every night before a test match, and on your itinerary, 6:15 captain's meeting. I can't tell you the amount of sleep I lost and stress that I had trying to come up with 10 minutes of conversation chat for my peers, because it was about me motivating them around what we were going to do the following day. And outside of the team room where there's video footage or on the pitch where it feels totally natural, this was like my thoughts. They were waiting to hear what I had to say. That was some of the hardest parts of the captaincy, I found. So, and you find a way, you navigate a path to make it work a little bit for you. Have the odd person talk on your behalf. I used to write my points down on an A5. An A5 is A5
the big one.
The big one, yeah. A5 page beside me, so all the eyeballs were off me and on the notes. I was like, okay,
wow,
take some.
Isn't it funny? So you didn't want everyone looking at you.
Exactly,
so you said, look at that. You had crutches.
Yeah, exactly.
What were you? Why didn't?
And
you
also, if I lost my trail of thought, I could just look up and see what was my next point.
Why didn't you want people looking at you? I mean, you were a leader. You were the captain.
But I was happy because you're out of your comfort zone. I'm happy to do that on the field, and it was just totally. That was a natural instinct to go right. Here we go. Let's follow me here. Whereas in like this contrived environment, you're like, oh my goodness, this feels alien.
Did you dream of wearing the green jersey as a kid?
Not massively.
Is that funny?
I think the hope was that maybe one day, but it wasn't. I was a football fan in my younger years. Rugby didn't really kind of get going until maybe 14, 15, didn't make the junior cup team in Blackrock College. I was a 15-year-old, got dropped, in my first year playing senior. So it all really happened very quickly, very late, around the speed between playing in school, just making the school team, and then playing for Ireland, 2-3 years later.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't really happen now.
Did you, as you chose Matilda, and we talked about Miss Honey and like good teachers, bad teachers, I find most of the guests on this podcast have a recollection of a really, really cracking teacher. Can
I tell you one story? This is absolutely not set up.
I know it's not. Sure, we didn't talk.
Said it,
we didn't talk.
Actually, it's terrible because I do actually get a little bit emotional thinking about this, because it was my Auntie Anne was a teacher in Belgrove in my national school.
Yes.
She's no longer with us. But I didn't have my glasses one day in school, and we were told to fill in the blanks on an Irish piece of work.
And you were what age?
Teacher was, I think, 7 or 8. Okay. So young. Didn't have my glasses. I was afraid to tell the teacher. I won't say who the teacher was. Sure. I don't want to be cruel about it.
Sure.
But he was very, very hard, excessively hard on us for that age. And anyway, I didn't want to say it to him because I was embarrassed. And so I tried to kind of copy the guy next to me to see what he was filling in. Anyway, it was like, come on, everyone get your work in. So I just handed my work in. Anyway, the next day he corrected it, and needless to say, it was appalling. It was all over the shop. And he told me to go into my auntie's class and show her the appalling work that I had done. And I was like, oh my God. So I went in kind of emotional to her. And anyway, she sent me back into my classroom, and he said, well, what did she say? And she said, well, she gave me a bag of sweets because my writing was so beautiful.
Oh my God.
I was like, it was one of the kindest things that actually anyone could have ever done.
Wow, what a lovely thing to do.
She just nailed it. She knew, she got it, and he couldn't say anything. It was like really, it put him in his place without being a dick about it as well.
She knew.
It was amazing. It was such an emotionally brilliant thing to do.
Insight.
It really was. She was a special, special woman. She really was.
She was your mum's or your dad's sister?
My dad's sister, yeah. My dad's sister, yeah. So it's mad. I'm not really that emotional a person, but it's the one thing that I think back that it really landed with me as a kid, the kindness needed at that time and how she just got it so spot on.
She must have been quite young when she died, was she?
Yeah, she would have been, how long has she gone? Maybe 7 or 8 years ago. She would have been in her, 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was she always a good person then?
No, she was great.
As an auntie,
yeah,
was she?
Great. Yeah. So positive, teacher for 40 years. She was very, very special.
God, those kids were lucky to have her in the classroom.
Very special.
I just love that story because it illustrates the Miss Honeys in our lives who spotted this situation. She needed to protect you, deliver a message to the slightly unpleasant figure in this story, and she needed to protect blushes all around and not cause a scene.
Exactly.
It was actually delicate.
It was very delicately handled,
It was beautiful.
Without, like I didn't go, you see? It wasn't one of those where, she put you back in your box. She came over the top of you. She didn't. She made a side note of something separate to what the actual issue was. It was just,
That's leadership.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
It was spectacular. Yeah. It really was.
Let's talk about, as you had a little, an emotional moment there, which I think was really appropriate. Let's talk about the book that made you cry. And I say this repeatedly, but on this show is that books don't make a lot of people cry because they're strange. You watch a movie, or sometimes I watch the news. I find it kind of upsetting. Sometimes you just see some awful imagery from whatever part of the world. What about you? You've said you're not necessarily what did you say? You're not an emotional person, or
I'm kind of quite mid-range. I don't get overly down or excessively euphoric about anything. So. Yeah, I wouldn't say I don't get drawn to tears very often. That said, I had to stop reading the newspaper today with something I read about Gaza, which was so upsetting.
Did it involve children?
It did. Yeah, it did. So I literally had to stop. It was so horrifying.
Is that the dad in you or just the human being in you?
I think probably a bit of both.
Yeah,
a bit of both. I literally, because it was early. I woke this morning. The gerbil started running in my head at about 4:30 this morning, and once it's running, I'm up.
So many guests on this program have the clattering monkey or the gerbil in their head, and when you're going, I could just, if the gerbil or whatever creature it is could just quieten down, I might get another half hour, an hour.
Yeah, and sometimes I can get away.
But anyway, he was having none of it today.
No, and I was in bed early last night. I was asleep.
So you're okay.
So I'd gotten 5 hours sleep. It was fine.
So you're up early?
Yeah, and then so I went down, and then it's nice to be able to go and do a little bit of a workout early before anyone's up, and then read the paper and have a cup of coffee.
Why don't you tell us what you read, and we'll take it from you there. And so you were reading about Gaza. What was happening in this story?
It was about a girl that had been orphaned.
Yeah.
And like her whole family had gone. She was living with her auntie, but it was around, I think, that her brother had been decapitated, but she was too afraid to kiss him goodbye.
Crikey. Yeah. I mean, how many stories are there like that in the world, unfortunately, out there at the moment? What happened to you when you read that? I mean,
I actually stopped.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about your own kids, and you just think about how nuts the world is at the moment.
I often think in those times about the lottery numbers in life. Why did those kids get those? And why did mine get mine or yours get yours? I'm trying to find the rhyme or reason. And then you probably get into an existential, philosophical going, where is God? Where?
It's funny, I went and started exercising immediately.
To do what?
Just to try and, I don't know, get some endorphins going, or just try and, I just couldn't sit there because you're on your own, you and the dog. It was probably a bit too early. It was still dark. I didn't want to go out walking the dog just yet. So I just felt as though I needed to not it wasn't not entertained that, but I just didn't want to stay in that because it just would have had such a negative adverse effect on me.
Yeah.
For a long period. So I just tried to I just parked it.
Do you ever feel guilty?
Oh yeah.
Why?
Because, for your exact point, is like that life lotto, around the 0.11% of the world, like we give out about certain
traffic,
like inconsequential stuff.
Yeah. Do you ever feel guilty for walking away from the article?
No, I did go back to it a little bit, but I you know what? I had enough of what I needed to read.
Yeah, you felt the point was made.
Yeah.
And you know.
Yeah.
There's not much you can do with that, is there? And then we'll go to the book, because I think that we call it the bookshelf, but I think newspapers are as important as books in terms of that's what you read. I'm with you on that. I read magazines, I read newspapers, so I'm nearly happy to let that. I'd nearly say on this one that newspaper article was the book or the piece that made you cry. I'd nearly offer that up here. But you did pick a book. We'll talk about it. But it's worth thinking. The book you've gone for on this one, Brian.
Well, the book I'm going to pick is neither of, to cry, neither of these two. If I was to pick, Lion was the...
Lion. So you're talking about a book that's based on the movie, Lion was the movie.
Yeah, Long Way Home.
Yes. By Saru Brierley.
Saru Brierley, yeah. And it was, for those that haven't seen the movie or read the book, it's a true story, based on a true story where, a young 4 or 5-year-old in India gets on the wrong train and doesn't know where they're ending up. And it was the initial journey was a long way away, and then trying to navigate their way home.
I saw the film. It's a remarkable story.
Like that, as a parent, God Almighty, it's the stress of the child, but the stress of the parent of trying to find the child, and then somehow finding his way back 25 years later, having been adopted by parents in Australia, in Tasmania, I think.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman.
She's involved, yeah.
So that,
there's the theme.
Jeez, for a non-emotional person, you're getting it out tonight.
Well, no, in fairness, it's only because you're chatting about things, you're talking about... go on.
It's all about it's all parenting, right? It is.
It changes everything.
Yeah, it does change it a whole lot.
I think that when you become a mum or a dad, and sometimes an aunt or an uncle, I don't like to be exclusive to people, but it's like being given a new set of eyeballs.
Yeah.
And everything changes, and you see the news differently, and you can imagine what if, or you watch a film or read a book and you go, what if, and that's what's happened for you. I'd say you've become arguably more emotionally engaged person as a result of that, because you're looking at the what ifery of it all, Let's talk about the book that changed your life. It's a big question, but is there a book in here that you can point to? I mean, you've had so many life-changing moments, and to imagine the idea of you it must have been you when we ask you the book that changed your life, you say, do you know what, books didn't really change my life. A lot more different things happened. I could tell you the pitch that changed my life, or the stadium that changed my life.
Yeah, I don't think there is one that changed my life.
Okay, but we forced you to pick a book off your shelf anyway.
Yeah, I think there's one that, the reason that I go to this book is because when I'm asked my favourite book, and we'll come on to the other one in due course, but it does feel as though it's a standout book for me.
Yeah.
And it's rare enough that I find myself in a situation. I only read this maybe 5-6 years ago, so I was a parent, but I remember at literally every opportunity trying to grab 3 or 4 pages.
This is the ultimate test for a book.
Like that, I just don't have that. I've read quite a few third halves of books. I've done that a bit. And it's just, I'm like, I don't know if I can finish this off. Yeah. And this book was everything except that.
Wow.
From that, it was like gripping, page on page from the off, just had me immediately. So
you're talking about
I Am Pilgrim by Terry Hayes.
Yeah, this is a phenomenally big selling book. Will you tell us can you give us the elevator pitch? Do you remember? I mean, I know you're saying, please don't ask me tough questions, but even the rough idea of what the story is.
It's like espionage, terrorism. There's like I don't want to. It can't be spoiler too much. Okay, really quickly.
Kill it.
Murder in New York. Guy's brought out of retirement, kind of FBI agent or in that space, and brought back in because there's this very detailed killing, and then it triggers something bigger.
Yeah,
and just a jihadist that had been turned and had a problem with the Western world, then wanted, was plotting kind of mass killing.
Yes,
and so it's this journey around one guy trying to find the other, and the morality of making decisions there and then, and also in the past, and
cat and mouse classic.
Yeah, I was so gripped by it.
Yeah,
it was a brilliantly written book.
And you haven't found anything since then, have you?
Because Terry Hayes passed away.
Yeah,
before the next book was finished, so I don't actually even know. I don't even think I've read it.
Yeah, but you haven't read a book as because that's really past. Yeah,
so there's one author that we'll talk about in a minute, an Irish author, that has that type very close to it.
That compelling
read that just I'm sucked in and I can't wait to get back to it.
I'm going to bundle this up now, and why don't we talk about her, because you brought her in and she's one of my favourites, so we share this. We can really shoot the breeze on this one for sure. Go for it.
Liz Nugent, all of her stuff, like I think I've read maybe 4 or 5 books, and I asked Twitter maybe 8-9 years ago in an airport, any book recommendations. I wanted one for a long haul flight, and someone said, "Oh, I think she did."
Well, she's smart because she's right.
She tweeted me. She said, "Oh,
try mine.
My mum says Unraveling Oliver is excellent." Yeah,
it was her.
Her mum was right. It was her.
This is a cracking book. So well written.
Yeah, and so this got me going on her, and I just find her writing sucks you in.
Yeah.
And each of her books have been intriguing and unsure of how they're going to go. I think the cleverness of this book, though, in particular, and how, this event happens at the very beginning of the book where a guy, puts his wife in a coma, and then, but then it's the backstory around his past, but then how each chapter is told by different characters throughout this guy's sphere. It's just clever. And then culminates in really intriguing finale.
Yeah, exactly. And you're on a plane going, I don't want this plane journey to end.
It was the great thing about not remembering books brilliantly well is I'm about to go back into these again. I'm not lying. I just couldn't find my glasses last night. I was going to start I Am Pilgrim again last night. Yeah, I was. I was like, do you know what? I can't remember the minutiae of it. I get the sense of what it was, but I think I could probably get like 75% enjoyment from it again.
How old are you?
45.
45. I'm 51, and I can now go back to films from 20 years ago as if I'd never seen them at all.
Okay,
so I think there's an age thing.
But not books.
That's a very good question. No, I don't really reread books, but I'm now at that age where I could comfortably reread a book now and not know the thing about the plot, even though I read it 20 years ago. Yeah,
okay.
A rough idea. But like you just said there, you could launch back into a book and say, oh, it's been so long.
But is that just books that, okay, you mightn't really have had too much of a grow for, but the really great books that you've read, you'll still have an encyclopedic knowledge or a very strong knowledge.
Yeah, I would have a very strong knowledge, but my difficulty with books is that there's so many I want to read that I think, why would I go back? I want to keep going forward. Fair enough. Like Kamala Harris, we're not going back.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's...
I want to keep marching on to the new stuff, so that's what it is. When you're... I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but you're now on TV a lot.
Mm.
And if you go back to the young, fairly introverted you that was, picking up your Matilda book and just enjoying life and reading a bit of Roald Dahl and all that kind of thing. The shyer type. Then the guy, the younger man that I would have interviewed down through the years, again, a shyer type of person. Now I see even when I met you, but when you came in to do this show before the show, you're just like you're not extrovert is probably too strong word, I would say, but you just seem so happy. You're a really easy communicator. You're a great company. What's happening? I mean, in that regard, I
think I'm pretty happy. I think I have a very much clearer picture of who I am taken me a good while to probably discover that. And
who are you?
I think trying to be I'm definitely not a people pleaser. You know, I think it's up to you. You know, your opinion is yours, whether whether you're into it or not. I'm just going to do what feels right and what feels natural. And sometimes I'm going to be quiet, and sometimes I'm going to be, heavily involved. And that's just in the chat and conversation. And sometimes I can have that capacity to be a little bit more of an extrovert, and sometimes I just want to shut it down over here and recharge the batteries. And I think, I think a lot of being in the public eye, you probably are trying to be a bit of a people pleaser, around playing, you're almost playing a role. And I've stopped playing the role.
How did you know you were playing a role? Was that a process or a moment?
I think it's only after the fact that you realise that because, particularly when you're a player, people will say, you're a role model. And so you can't break away from the conformity of what the role model piece is meant to be. And so you probably adhere to that a little bit, or you play into that. Whereas, not that I think it's just being true to yourself. Yeah. Doing what suits you. I don't go to the stuff that I don't want to go to anymore. I've stopped doing that. Yeah. I've just stopped. That's the people pleasing stuff. Like being put out. Really put out. I'll do what I think deserves to be done. And sure, you do the things that are a bit of a pain in the backside for those that have been there a long time, and that's just par for the course. But there's certain stuff that I get asked to do or go to, and I'm just not doing it anymore. It's very liberating. Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, I think. Listen, you have to make sure that you've got an unbelievably full diary, that there's a conflict, etc., etc. But I'm not, because time is, particularly with children, time is valuable. The time spent with them, but also then your time with friends. I want to make sure that extra piece that I have carved out for friends and relationships, that it's well spent. Yeah, because I work hard and I travel quite a lot, so the different slots of energy that you give to make sure that you're well resourced for the important stuff. Because you're one of the most recognisable people on the island of Ireland and beyond, what are you getting on the street, or when you're on an airplane, or in the shops? I mean, not your local shops, that's different because they tend to know who you are and all the rest. But are you selfied out of it, or no? How are you? No, I think it. Has it calmed down? And yeah, it has. It's adjusted now back to relative normality. Unless you go to a match or something, in which course. Yeah. I think it's probably quite a nice level of fame. Nice equilibrium. Yeah. You're happy with it? It's not overawing. It's not too much. It's not a pain in the backside. Yeah. It's just fine. And as a TV, I was going to say TV personality. What a terrible word. Sorry about games, that. You go to a rugby environment, you're going to get it. Yeah. So I don't go to games for fun. I go and work. Yeah. And then I'm not going for enjoyment to support the lads. Okay. And when former friends of yours or teammates, or certainly the next generation, are playing and everything, you kind of have to watch your language. Do you a little bit? I mean, do you have to kind of be careful how you address? Yeah, certainly for the relationships that you want to maintain. There's one thing you discover. I started young, so a lot of my friends were older than me. That I kind of subsequently transpired and dawned on me that by the time I retired, a lot of my really good friends had retired well before me. But you have a group, so the likes of Johnny Sexton's a good example. Lives around the corner from me. We see a good bit of each other, play a bit of golf, have dinner together. Yeah. Thankfully his play didn't necessitate too much negative feedback. Yeah. But lots of ways to make sure that you do give a message that is fair, but to the point. So what might have been originally, it's a poor pass from Jonathan Sexton became, that's a very unlikely pass from Johnny Sexton. A very uncharacteristic pass from Johnny Sexton.
We're back to the delicate diplomatic dance language and just...
because you see, you need relationships. You're trying to... Yeah, there's some people... I'm never trying, as an analyst, I'm never trying to put the boot in. You're trying to be as soft as you can, but you also have to not be disingenuous to your role.
Yes.
And so some people need, delicate handling. Others, you can be a little bit more honest, but don't be mean.
Yeah. Nice. I'm feeling your auntie being channeled there.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope there's some trait, some level of...
I just feel that was a really important lesson she gave.
It was a huge lesson. Huge lesson.
Little did she know.
Yeah. I'm sure she knew. I knew she must have gone home and gone, I got it right today.
Yeah. He's going to be out there in Lansdowne Road someday. I better give him the right lesson. Okay, last question before we say goodbye. Brian O'Driscoll, obviously you've written an autobiography, but what we're talking about is the autobiography, the name of the autobiography that you have yet to write. So things have changed since in the last number of years. So this is the fantasy book title. Your life now, in the future, or in the past, in a book title. Do
you know what? I've got a production company with Craig Doyle, and we've done a few documentaries, and we did one on Irish rugby, throughout the Troubles, called Shoulder to Shoulder, and the second documentary that I anchored was about the aftermath of professional rugby or professional sport, and we focused on men in particular because of the very high suicide rates in men under 50, and so it was called After the Roar. So when it all goes away, and we were lucky. You got some great contributors, like Gareth Southgate and AP McCoy and Johnny Bairstow, the English cricketer, wicketkeeper, whose father, having played professional cricket, took his own life. When he was 10 years of age. So just to get a huge range of different experiences. So it probably would be a book version of it around, I was really lucky that I had lots of opportunity when I finished, but it was still bloody hard.
Yeah.
And because you do all the first year in particular, you do all of the parties and go to all the invites and do all the exciting stuff in your,
you're distracted, aren't you? And
say you're hot property, but you're off the press. You're right. You're recently off the press, so you're getting the good stuff, and you do 1 year of it, and then you go, that was cool, but it's not as good as professional or as international rugby.
Yeah.
And then so years 2, 3, and 4, I think I found difficult. Ireland were going very well. You're kind of going, whoa, lads, like, go okay, but not too well, okay? I want everyone to go 1 to 12 and 14 to 15 to go really well, but 13 doesn't have to be killing it.
That's funny.
Listen, of course there's ego in us all. And, so
that stops.
And I think that transition, and it's definitely a really challenging time. And one of the comforting things that I got from a piece of advice I got after about 18 months from an old a friend and an ex-colleague, Victor Costello, who has gone in from being afraid of flying, went into being a commercial pilot. So an incredible transition. But he said to me, and he gave me such comfort with it, he said, it took me 10 years to transition when I was looking for all these answers after 18 months. And it gave me this huge relief that I didn't have it all cracked. Yeah. And I was lucky that I was busy. And people think you're living your best life, but we're so lucky as professional athletes, particularly if you get to play for your country and play a number of times, that you really are living the dream. It's an exceptional life that not everyone gets to live. Sure. That's the reality. And so sometimes it doesn't dawn on you until after the fact about how great that time was and how enjoyable it was. Yeah. And so when you take that enjoyment away and you go into something less enjoyable, okay, won't get the baby violins out. People won't feel too sorry because you got to enjoy the first part, but it does make it hard.
Yeah.
Around trying to transition into finding purpose in something else, enjoyment in something else. And you don't draw comparisons. You don't try and compare whatever you're doing next to what you did previously because it's incomparable. But I think taking enjoyment out of some of the simple things in life, your kids become a huge part of that.
No doubt. And the book title then you're going to go with is?
So After the Roar.
After the Roar.
I'll just keep it on same title. Yeah.
It's a good choice.
Yeah.
It's a good choice. I really enjoyed that conversation, Brian.
Yeah, I'm glad it didn't get too booky.
I'm glad. I'd like to ask you, on page 17 of I Am Pilgrim, what does the character say when... No, obviously, this was not a test, but it was just a conversation about those books, but also about who you are. And I just love seeing you so content. And I think that's what one wants in life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think
content.
that comes with experience, with working out what doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, in all reality, I'm past halfway in my life. So to make sure that you don't continue to do some of the things that didn't work for you in the first part, in the second part, and iron that out and find the things, be a little bit more selfish where you can, because as a parent, you have to be so selfless. So in the areas that you can be a bit more selfish and choose for you, I'm choosing for me.
Brian O'Driscoll, to you and your family, every happiness, and thanks for being here
Thanks,
today.
Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So here's this week's Ryan Recommends, brought to you by Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller. I am going to go with Ragnar Jónasson, badly pronounced because he's from Iceland, but that's as far as I can get with his name. He's one of my favourites. I've read everything he's written. He brings you a kind of Agatha Christie with an even more cruel, snow-drifted twist. And all his books take place in that beautiful country, not a million miles away from where we are. In fact, it's only a letter that separates us. Quite similar in many ways. It's dark, it's gloomy, but it's beautifully written. And this one, Death at the Sanatorium. Obviously, it's Ragnar, so it's going to be death, it's going to be a sanatorium, and it's going to have that locked room feel to it. Not only that, it also references a load of classic crime books that fit into this genre. So it guides you somewhere else you want to be. Ellery James, for example, was one author that's mentioned, and I've read that book since. So this will not disappoint. This is crime thrilling writing at its best. It's Ragnar. If you like this, you'll go back to his back catalogue and you're going to love it. This book and all the books we discuss on this episode of our podcast are available now in your local Eason store, or order them online from easons.com before 6 p.m. for same-day dispatch with free delivery when you spend over a tenner. Eason, be inspired.